Ready?
I'm ready.
We're ready to roll.
I was giving him IV Rocefin. His blood pressure dropped, and now he's unresponsive.
CPR.
Check a pulse. Is he breathing?
Oh,
Oh, you got no breathing and no pulse.
Compressions. Alright. Do we have a recorder?
Yep.
thanks.
Who's doing airway?
And this is going to be your guys' crash cart here.
This is a refresh cart. Do you want to do meds, Molly? Okay. Do we have pads or anything that we're reading?
Yep, you've got all the stuff, all your meds, and all your stuff's down there on the
Do we have
bottom.
anybody on the floor?
No, actually.
I'll go.
Let's do that.
Yeah, it's okay. Well,
Oh, no,
yeah,
we're
everybody.
putting
Yep,
everything on,
Okay.
doing,
this is,
Good deal.
we're doing the real shebang.
Oh,
The
rip it
IV.
open, all that stuff?
Yep, the IV will, you can push meds through the IV, the whole
Nice.
works.
What's vitals?
So she had a 70 systolic blood pressure initially, and 2 weak pulse, so she couldn't read an SpO2. We don't know anything about heart rate or rhythm yet. He's still pulseless.
Fresh scissors.
And epi?
So you want your monitor?
We got signs. Yeah. Ready.
Okay, been 2 minutes.
I don't know.
It's been 2 minutes.
Joey, you know I put this
Looks
on.
like
I
we're
do not.
in
That would be a good time to learn, huh?
Pulse. Back on the chest. Probably need 2 of epi now. Or 1 of epi, sorry.
Steve, do you need a break?
No, crash cart.
2 of
This is
epi
your crash
given.
cart.
Epi in?
Has anyone got stuff now?
Yeah.
I just stopped and looked at the
That arm's gonna come off. Just lay it to the side. You can still use it.
We need suction.
Yeah, so he's gonna, looks like the guy that was stuff going on
Who's doing airway?
here. Looks like Kurt.
Kurt. Okay.
Is this guy breathing or what? No?
Nope.
Ew. Hand move back.
Yeah, we need suction, don't we?
Suction bad. You guys hooked up?
All your airway stuff is on the bottom.
Suction's over by Devin.
You got somebody timing?
It's only been 1 minute for the epi.
I do have this plugged in, is that okay?
Suction that up. That roll, Joey's got your roll.
Oh.
So the last few rhythms have been nothing.
You've had pulseless feedback, which you see here.
Okay. Did we shock?
Turn.
Nope. I guess he doesn't have a pulse, so we're in the normal.
We're good?
Yep.
Time?
Yeah, you can draw it out. It's almost been 2 minutes.
Drawing up 2 of epi. We need to do a pulse check now.
Pausing.
we got? No pulse? Okay, we're gonna continue.
Continue.
Alright, and we'll have to charge the defibrillator.
You guys can charge and shock.
Is there pads on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That's it, charge.
Charging. Okay. I'm good.
Clear, everybody clear?
Clear?
Talking. Okay.
Start. I guess you never stop.
This.
Look,
You
you
can,
can
I was
stop.
like, you can continue. You can shock it.
One of Effie? And that's nice and frothy. One of Effie in?
Yep.
What do you got in there?
I know, but it's nasty.
It's shaving cream.
Wipe it
Yeah.
on your pants.
Just wiped it off with the same. Of course I got it. Shall I give it another shot?
Somebody turned the TV on.
Did you for real son?
Yeah, it's kind of frothy on there. Does the crash cart have a little book with it?
From here.
No, not this.
You got two? Yeah, I like that
Do you know from this?
Should we get like some amiodarone filled up maybe, or?
Tube holder there.
You're listening to placement?
We got the end title seal too.
Yeah, I'll give you all this for a black
We want 300? You said one time. 300 first and then
Yep.
100.
Yep.
Gone up 300 of amiodarone?
So we're 23 at the lip.
1, 2, 3, and the lip.
How are we doing on time, Diana?
We are almost 2 minutes out from Epi again.
Tell us when it's 2 minutes, we'll do a pulse check.
You can do a pulse check.
This is Haley.
Okay, pausing, checking for a
Hey,
pulse.
Steve.
Yeah. Looks like VFib on the monitor, do we not feel the pulse?
Let's shock.
Okay, I'll get it. Okay, I'll get it.
And go over a shot.
300 of
The front desk
amiodarone
is
and
freaking out and they keep calling me, telling me to turn it off, turn it off. And I said, in a real code, we're not gonna be able to get to everything, so.
Go ahead and charge that
And
up
there's
to
no
200.
one on the floor.
And you gave the 300 ammo.
300 ammo and I need to do one more of
Charging.
Effie.
Yes, you can do Epi after. What do you charge? 200?
Charging the 200. We're ready, everybody clear?
We're clear.
Shocking,
Shock.
go.
Okay. So are we?
Gone up one of Effie.
Do we have two lines established?
No,
So
we have
let's look, you
one.
guys, let's look at the monitor. We have
Yeah,
a
one's
rhythm
in that
change.
arm.
It's
One of Effie given.
Okay.
This is your question, what do you
So we're in VFib.
So it's supposed to be torsades.
But we wouldn't know that, right? We're gonna-
No, because we have to stop it.
Where's our wrestling pod? Let's crack one of those open.
Adding those down. So your end titles are about 19 with compression right now, 19, 20, 22.
Okay.
So we can slow up our respiration a little bit.
Okay, back that's back to about 8 to 10, right?
And we're sure our tubes in.
Yeah, we secured the tube, the Burgess cat and I could be both on fast cords. Should have done this.
What's his blood sugar?
I'm gonna get a finger stick, we'll say it's 170.
Yeah. we can make one.
So with his history of alcohol, drugs, do we need to get some mag?
Probably more thick these beds, but yeah. As soon as we know that, which we don't yet.
Keep buzzing. Go for a pulse.
No pulse.
No pulse.
That's what you see.
Polymorph with defib. I think Meg is a good idea.
Sounds good.
Charge that.
200.
Charge into 200.
Everybody clear?
We're clear.
Shock coming. And at lightning at the same time.
Yeah.
Probably nothing to beer.
So where's our pretend our magnesium?
Yeah. Our antibiotics.
Over there.
We'll just-
We're
Okay, so we have a rhythm change. Do we have a pulse after that shock?
We're not gonna check it. We
The
won't.
lightning hit him.
This is
Wait till 2 minutes.
Yeah, we still would be able to see it. As well.
What about when's our next epi due?
Did you give it
No, I didn't do it at this stop.
so we can do it at 1342. You considered the mag, did we name the mag?
The mag is running.
Running, okay. So he can have epi again. So it was at 1339, given it 1340.
Another milligram of epi given. One minute.
So
Okay.
you gave it at 1344?
Yes. We have 2 minutes until I'm full check.
Yes. Because it wasn't checked after the shock given, so yeah, we can.
Pausing. Feel a pulse.
Through the pulse?
You guys do have a pulse.
Oh, but how slow, how fast?
It is.
Changed again.
Oh,
Feel a pulse.
Yep, you guys still have a pulse.
SVT 120. What's blood pressure?
So,
Oh,
Going back and forth.
yep, so you cycle blood pressure, you guys still have the 70s systolic, it's just 70 over triple question mark. Your end title's at about 32, and he's got an SpO2 that's reading about 89%.
Okay.
So what do we want to do for the post-cardiac arrest care?
The cooling measures.
Yes. Cool fluids.
temperature.
TT. Let's get a helicopter coming. Get him out of here.
So it's kind of, I tried
Helicopter
to
can't
use
fly
a
today.
really
Oh,
bright
let's get my
chartreuse
crew.
colored board here, but if we see the guy came in, he had epigastric pain, he had nausea, diaphoretic, do an EKG.
Mm-hmm. Check heart. Some cardiacs, which are probably gonna be crazy high. Definitely gives mag that he sees. Is he
No seizure. Everything that happened to him is what you see up there.
okay?
So what do you guys think?
Um,
Okay guys, so that mock code that you guys just observed is something that we're going to start doing monthly. Now, I just want to say here before we start that the group of folks that responded to this did a fantastic job. There's a lot of areas that we can improve, but the one thing that I really want to say is that it is very difficult to respond to these things, and you get this big adrenaline dump because you think you're going to a cardiac arrest only to arrive and find a plastic man, right? Simulation is definitely, bar none, going to be more difficult than running the real thing. And the reason for that is because you end up, going 100 miles an hour into a room only to find a plastic man on the bed. And then not only that, but not really understanding what the expectations are during the cardiac arrest simulation. So we're really using this to kind of allow for people to see what the expectations will be when we do this monthly, and to kind of use this as our benchmark, as that baseline to kind of see where we can improve and how we can make these actual events better. So once again, these guys did a fantastic job, and they really did step up and really get a good grasp of the expectations here pretty quick. So throughout the debrief, what we're going to talk about is their overall timeline, and this is just a reiteration of what you guys saw throughout the video. And we'll talk about some of the areas that we can improve on and some of the areas that these guys did a really good job on. So, timeline. Code blue button was pressed about 6 seconds from our mock nurse, or is a nurse, but came to the bedside, noticed that the patient was crashing, hit that button. So, 36 seconds until our code team responded, and there was a pulse check done at 43 seconds. First CPR was initiated at 50 seconds, and our rolls were assigned at 58 seconds. The defibrillator was applied at 2 minutes and 6 seconds. First rhythm check, 2 minutes, 24 seconds. First epi, 3 minutes and 3 seconds. ER staff arrived with the Lucas and had that applied by 3 minutes and 45 seconds. And our provider arrived at bedside at 4 minutes and 16 seconds. So a second pulse rhythm check was done at 4 minutes and 58 seconds. The first defibrillation was given at 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Second epinephrine was given at 5 minutes and 55 seconds. They established an airway at 6 minutes and 40 seconds. End-tidal was first measured at 7 minutes and 15 seconds. Pulse and rhythm check at 7 minutes, 38 seconds. They gave a dose of amiodarone, and that was the first dose at 7 minutes and 49 seconds. They performed their second defibrillation at 8 minutes and 12 seconds. They gave their third epi at 8 minutes, 33 seconds. They did another pulse and rhythm check at 10 minutes and 17 seconds. They did their third defibrillation at 10 minutes and 36 seconds. They gave their fourth epi at 11 minutes and 45 seconds. They had another pulse rhythm check at 12 minutes, 22 seconds. And that's where they discovered ROSC, and that was at 12 minutes and 27 seconds. And that concluded the simulation. So here is just a copy of our AHA pulseless VTAC, VFib algorithm. And we can see just on this that we had a couple things that kind of fell out. And one of those big things is the recognition of the rhythm, that defibrillation. And then you can see that we kind of got a little out of whack with our medications. And we're going to talk about that in the next slide. So some of the areas that we can improve here. So first and foremost, there's a lot of things that we measured with this. And one of those things, and this is, in all honesty, guys, the entire team approach. And what I mean by the team is the organization in general. There's a lot of moving parts to managing a cardiac arrest. And that really should be the mindset, because there's so many links in the chain to make this run smoothly. We wanted to really step back and look at, who is all involved with these resuscitations, and how can we measure their effectiveness and make improvements. And one of those things, first and foremost, is once the code blue button was hit, there was a huge amount of confusion. Now, it was amazing that these guys responded as quickly as they did with the confusion that was present. There was that initial alarm from pressing the code blue button, but there was never any identification of what room it was and what part of the hospital. It was never announced overhead. We just heard the alarm. So second, crash cart was never brought to the room. Now, you saw our simulated crash cart, and that unfortunately is the best thing that we can provide to these mock codes for the time being. Hopefully we can get something better in the future, but right now that's what we're using. But just as another measurement point, there was never an actual crash cart brought to the room. So it was about 4 minutes and 16 seconds before a provider arrived at bedside. Now, I know that this is kind of a little nitpicky, and there is a little bit of a hang up here, and the reason for that is because the provider from FMC was never contacted. We did contact the provider in advance to make sure that we were we were going to do this at an appropriate time of day. So this was not, going to be a surprise to them. They knew that they were going to be responding to a mock code, but it was never conveyed to them by the hospital operator, which, once again, nobody's fault, no real problem, just something that we can take and we can improve on. So the provider that actually responded was a nurse practitioner from the ER, and this was the amount of time it took them to get there, 4 minutes and 16 seconds. So out of the total of 11 minutes and 37 seconds that CPR was being done, we spent a total of 109 seconds, or 1 minute and 49 seconds off the chest. So this is really big, and you can see that I put some little time mark tabs on there and actually timed the amount of time that we were off the chest, because this really is a huge thing that we really need to be good about, is minimizing the time that we are delaying CPR. And as we move forward and as we push some of this education out and as we do these mock codes, this is one of the things we're going to be watching the closest, is the amount of time that we're spending off the chest. And this is definitely something that we can make some huge improvements on. All in all, I think that we did pretty good, but this is something. A number is rather alarming. But I think that if we would actually go back and measure, in most cases, we'd probably be seeing something similar to this. So the next thing is the patient was in a shockable rhythm and was not defibrillated for 5+ minutes. So we see that we come in, they hit their first 2 minutes, or their stated 2 minutes. I don't think we were quite there. But they identify what the rhythm is. They have the pads on. And it was not until 5 minutes after they initially arrived at bedside, or a little more than 5 minutes, that we delivered that first defibrillation. So we can get those on quicker, and we honestly should be getting those on quicker. So the next thing was epi was given too early. Now, if we look at our cardiac arrest algorithms, and we look at our PVT or our VF algorithm, we're not giving epi right away. And that is something that is confusing for a lot of people versus the asystole and pulseless electrical activity algorithm. We want to get that epi on quick. The opposite is actually true for pulseless VTAC and ventricular fibrillation. We want to follow that algorithm down to where we do give that epi after that initial defibrillation, right? So the other thing about the epi is not only that it was given too soon in the algorithm, but we had these 2 repeat doses of epi that were given kind of in a at weird times, and they weren't quite 3 minutes apart. Remember, we got to focus on that 3 to 5 minutes for the epi. We gave epi too soon. We gave it too close together, and we gave it too often. We gave too many epis when we're talking about our cardiac arrest drugs. We didn't really hit the algorithm where we should have with the code drugs, meaning our epis and our amiodarones. So you guys probably noticed that through the video. You can go back and look at the algorithm. You can see the times. And we can definitely take these areas and improve. So the next thing below that, we see that amiodarone was given late, and it was given not terribly late in the algorithm, but we were in there significantly. We'd already given almost, I think, 2 or 3 epis prior to administering that amiodarone. And we only gave that initial dose of the amiodarone. There was another time that amiodarone fell into the algorithm that we did not give it, and we actually ended up giving another epi. So the patient only got that initial dose of 300 milligrams of amiodarone. So the next thing to point out here is that the patient did not receive ventilation for 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And we did throw a curveball at these guys, and we filled the mannequin's mouth full of shaving cream. So when the patient was ventilated, all of that shaving cream that was in the patient's mouth was actually, they noticed it, and then the patient was ventilated. So if that was emesis, we definitely wouldn't want to do that, right? We definitely would not want to do that, because we wouldn't want to create a bigger problem, an aspiration pneumonia on top of this post-cardiac arrest victim, right? We would want to suction that out. So we tried to simulate the way that these responses have gone historically, and we put the suction canister on the wall, but there was no suction tubing or a suction catheter on the wall. It was available on the crash cart, and they did eventually get the patient's airway suctioned prior to placing an ET tube. But this is something that we really can do better on, and we can see that this could be, and it has been an issue in the past, and this is something that we can use to measure this and make this and make these types of improvements to make this equipment available to the responders in these instances. So the next thing, Entitle was not applied for 7 minutes and 15 seconds. That was when Entitle was first applied, and it was applied to the ET tube. Now remember, and this is something we always forget, we can put Entitle on a BVM, right? And Entitle plays such an important role in cardiac arrest. We really need to be getting this on as quickly as we can. So that is something that we can definitely improve on. It's something that now we can see. It's often something that's not even available to us at the bedside, but it is very, very, very important to have. So pulse rhythm checks were generally throughout the entire resuscitation greater than 2 minutes apart, some more than others. And there were lengthy gaps between those pulse rhythm checks when we were checking for a pulse, when we were checking for a rhythm, that it was actually the time between checking and actually delivering a defibrillation. There were pretty significant gaps. Remember, we're sitting there, we're pausing Lucas, check pulse, check rhythm. Defibrillator's already charged at this point, right? We're charging while we're checking, clear shock. So they really should be very, the shocks and the check should be very, very close together. So the things that went well here. So the response, 36 seconds, that's really good. And the turnout that they had was really good. Now granted, we were in the old OB section, Diana's infusion area, and we were really close to the floor. I still think that the response to this was pretty good, given the fact that nobody really knew where the code was occurring at. They had to go back to the desk, they had to see where the alarm was coming from, and they responded that way. So that was very, very good. The amount of people that responded initially, I think there was about 5 or 6 that came from the med-surg floor. So that's awesome. Really good turnout for it. The next thing was Molly stepped up right away as the house supervisor, understanding that, there's not a provider there, and took charge. She did an excellent job. She came in and recognized that this was a cardiac arrest. She started assigning roles and she started calling the shots, which this is important. Everybody takes ACLS and PALS. Everybody knows the algorithms. Anybody should be able to lead the resuscitation. Okay, so that is what we really, really want to drive home here, is that when we get in a situation like this where we've got a bunch of people that respond to one of these events, everybody in the room is just looking for somebody to take charge. All right, so that's very, very important, and I really do want to highlight that Molly did an excellent job here and stepped in and started giving direction until a provider arrived. So, as I mentioned, the roles were assigned promptly, and overall, people maintained the roles that they were given. So we didn't have a lot of, for lack of a better term, cowboying and kind of going from role to role around the room. Everybody that showed up maintained the roles that they were given and did a really good job in the roles that they were given. So the next thing, the Lucas was promptly applied. This is an area that we really want to get better at, is having that Lucas available and getting that Lucas on as soon as we possibly can. And the reason for that is to minimize these delays in chest compressions, right? Because people get fatigued, people get distracted, the Lucas does not. So they did an excellent job getting that Lucas on quickly. And after they got the Lucas on, the transitions during the pulse checks to continuing CPR and actually performing compressions through the defibrillations was great. They were excellent. I think that the pauses were all less than 10 seconds, and they were all kind of around that 8 or 9. I think we can still improve on that, but it was really good following the Lucas application. So communication was pretty good. They did an excellent job. People were calling out the medications when they gave them. They were calling out the procedures. They were, really doing a good job at making sure that the person keeping track of the code was able to hear that and write that information down. Now, the code sheet I received at the end was it was a blank piece of paper is all that we gave them. And I think Diana was keeping record, and she did a fantastic job. It was all very clear and concise. The times were very similar to what I showed you on the video. There was a little bit of deviation. Obviously, when we're looking at an analog clock on the wall, it's going to be a little bit different than a digital readout, but they were very, very close. So the wrap up here, as we mentioned, guys, this is something that we're going to be doing relatively routinely. It's going to be hopefully something that we'll do every month. We'll hopefully do more than one of them a month, and we're going to film each and every one. And the reason for that is not to point fingers at anybody, not to make anybody feel bad or go on a witch hunt in any way, shape, or form. It truly is so everybody can see the areas that we can improve. And if you think about, athletics, football, for example, these athletes study game film relentlessly in order to make improvements and get better. And that's the idea behind this. It's not in any way, shape, or form to single anybody out. It's just so we can make improvements. And with every area that there's room to improve, there's also a ton of areas where we can sit there and we can talk about how good certain people did in certain areas. All right, so there's going to be a lot of good things that come from doing these. So thank you guys very much for watching this. I do once again want to thank the folks that were the guinea pigs with this. They did an excellent job. They really did put forth what the expectations of this is going to be. There's going to be a little bit more in the way of education and areas that we can build prior to doing these mock codes, so that people can, go in and see, some of the expectations and some of the practices that may better these resuscitation outcomes. And so, all in all, these guys, with not having any of that and not really knowing how we were going to deal with the plastic man, did a fantastic job. So once again, you guys, thank you very much for watching this. Hopefully everybody enjoys doing these in the future. I don't anybody ever look at these and think that this is something, negative or some type of punishment. It truly is something that we're going to use to get better. So you guys, if you have any questions, or if you guys have any comments or recommendations for how to make these things better in the future, don't hesitate to let me know, and we'll definitely get these things implemented. Thank you.